记得我那时的黑色头发还没有一丝白色啊，直到你还在怪我，但你别哭了吧。那天晚上我醉出了时差，整个酒吧都在看我的笑话。你若今天来问我，我绝对不敢回答。如果在18，我没能送你花，那到28，我请你喝酒吧，一直醉到讲出情话，也算此生无憾啦。如果在18，我没能送你花，那到28，我请你喝酒吧，你的眼泪偷偷去擦，可能喝醉也是种办法。那天晚上我醉出了时差，整个酒吧都在看我的笑话。你若今天来问我，我绝对不敢回答。如果在18，我没能送你花，那到28，我请你喝酒吧，一直醉到讲出情话，也算此生无憾啦。如果在18，我没能送你花，那到28，我请你喝酒吧，你的眼泪偷偷去擦，可能喝醉也是种办法。如果在18，我没能送你花，那到28，我请你喝酒吧，一直醉到讲出情话，也算此生无憾啦。如果在18，我没能送你花，那到28，我请你喝酒吧，你的眼泪偷偷去擦，可能喝醉也是种办法。
Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today, I'm going to continue talking about subjects that are of interest to me, and in this one, I'm going to talk about a place where I live, which is China. It is perhaps the most vilified nation on the planet. Very, very powerful interests with huge amounts of money absolutely disparage it in a complete and absolute manner. You have the United States prepping an anti-China campaign as a prelude for a hot or kinetic war. Forget about the hybrid war stuff. The United States wants to destroy China. You have oligarchs such as George Soros with oodles and oodles of money, creating narratives that villainize and disparage China. You have groups of religious fanatics, such as the Falun Gong, and charismatic Christians who despise the idea that China will not allow them to create their cults inside of the body politic. And they create these narratives, and with their millions and millions of US dollars that they've got through taxes, seizures, or just blind, mindless NPC followers, they use this money to create these narratives to convince the world about the dangers of China. And I see it all the time. I set up a video or an article, and sure enough, out of the woodwork come people regurgitating these narratives. Just yesterday, I wrote an article talking about how China resembled Starship Troopers, and the first comment was a guy who's talking about how evil Xi Jinping was. How does he know? Has he talked to Xi Jinping? Has he been to Beijing? Has he been to China? Does he personally know somebody? No. He knows this because of the media that he has read. He is regurgitating nonsense because he has no personal history. He has no stories to tell. He can just repeat what he has read. He can just repeat what he has viewed on YouTube. He can just repeat the narratives concocted by others because it appeals to his low self-esteem and ignorance of the world. Being a villainized nation, when you actually come here to China, and experience it for yourself, that is when your eyes open up and you see, wait a second, not only is it not even like anything you're talking about, you are talking about something that does not exist. I'll tell you a story. I was living with this model. She was a really beautiful girl, and she was a literal model when I lived in Boston. Her name was CJ. Beautiful blonde hair, thin body, proportioned in the right area. A stunner, seriously. She had the most beautiful driver's license picture I have ever seen in my life. She was a natural. Tall, too. Normally I don't go for tall girls, but she was a stunner. But anyways, there was an event in our life, and of course, when you're married, or not married, you're dating. And actually, I wasn't even dating, I was living with her. And all kinds of guys, want to be with her and take her away from me. And so they're all the guys are always talking bad about me. She liked being with me, but the other guys, they all wanted her, so they're always talking bad about me, so that she would turn away from me and go with them. That's how the narrative works. People use disparagement of a person, place, or thing so that they can obtain personal profit from it. In this case, the personal profit was my girlfriend, CJ. And I once asked her, I says, you're telling me about this guy and what he's telling about me. Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you go with him? And you know what she said? She said something very interesting to me, and I really loved how she worded it. She says, she knew it was bullshit. I says, how do you know it was bullshit? She says, because it is out of character. That is not who you are. That is not how you would behave. It is totally alien to everything that I know that you are. And that is why many of us who is inside of China absolutely laugh and look askance at the people repeating these narratives that are so anti-China, because it doesn't fit the character. It doesn't fit the body politic. It makes no sense. Like the guy who's saying, well, Xi Jinping is totally evil and corrupt. Yeah, a guy who did volunteer work for decades in the rural hinterlands, helping people in small villages in inaccessible, poverty-ridden areas, is of course a corrupt person. Of course, right? That's what I'm supposed to believe, right? People construct narratives for their own personal gain. And if you're living in the for-profit West, the narratives are in hysteria right now because they want what China has. Just like the guys wanted CJ, but I had her. Actually, I didn't have her, and she didn't have me. We had a relationship at that time. And if they would have been a little bit patient, they could have spent time with CJ. Just a little bit patient, but they weren't. And that's what happens when people have desires. They don't have patience. All they care about is what they want. And they go about it to obtain it in many, many odd and strange ways. And even on this small example, it was still propaganda-filled bullshit. I talked with one of my employees yesterday, asked her how her daughter was doing. She has a daughter in kindergarten right now, and for the last 2 weeks, she was bringing her daughter to the office because her daughter had a cold, sniffles and coughing, and she wasn't allowed to attend kindergarten. It's a fixed role in China, you know. The idea that a child who is coughing or obviously sick cannot attend school. You would never see that in the United States. Another thing that you wouldn't see was the fact that somebody like me would allow an employee, to bring their child to work. She was well behaved. Had a little cot set up in one of the conference rooms for her to take her nap in. It doesn't affect the bottom dollar, but it really affects the lifestyle of the employees. You have to understand that community, society, business is an organism. It's not a dollar-driven entity whose sole purpose is only to make money and just to make money. And that is something that I've really learned since I came to China. Businesses are a venue for individuals and groups of people to provide a dutiful service in one way or the other to the community. It's not a way for a singular individual to make money. I first learned this difference was when one of the first jobs that I picked up when I was in China was, after I got paid, and a few weeks later, they gave me a box of milk. I was like, a box of milk? Why are you giving me a box of milk? Well, turns out that the Chinese law is very clear that a business provides house and food, either physically, all right, there's your desk and here's the key to your house, which is usually an apartment, either singularly or shared with others in a dorm-like situation where you get your own room, or in cash subsidy. You have, if the cost of an apartment for you or a shared apartment for you is $3,000 a month, that's tacked on in your salary. Likewise, you have either meals, and if it's a factory, you've got a canteen. Or if you're a business, everybody shows their ID and they go into one of the approved restaurants and you get a free meal paid for by the company. If they don't do that, they give you an increase in your salary. That's why, in China, the Chinese are doing so much better than Americans. Not only do they have month-long vacations and yearly bonuses, but you don't have to worry about rent because you have your own place. You don't have to worry about food because you're fed well. You never see that in the United States. But the profit-oriented United States would say, but that's wrong. That's impossible. That's a lie. Because how can China make money? What about the investors? China doesn't care about making money. They care about having a business. And that difference between making money and having a business is like night and day when you're trying to talk to somebody from the West. They just cannot understand it. It's mind blown. They just don't understand it. How can China and the Chinese have businesses, make businesses with other people, like what's going on in the Solomons, like the Belt and Road Initiative, like all the businesses in Africa, with the intention of building a business and not making substantive and enormous profits? They don't understand it, which makes people like George Soros go crazy, and which makes other businesses, those in the United States, scratch their head in disbelief and misunderstanding. But guys, that's the way it's done. It's a different mindset. What's that old movie? Build the ballpark and they will come. I forget the name of the movie. It was back in the 80s. Guy builds, he sees ghosts or hallucinations or hear voices, and so he builds this baseball park in the middle of a cornfield. Everybody thinks he's nuts. And the ghosts of the ball players come. A nice fantasy movie. But in China, the idea is you create a functional society and then you provide places of employment for people. They then provide towards that society in one way or the other. And that's very significant. Maybe you make money, maybe you don't money. Certainly, if you're not making money, the organization doesn't survive. But no, you can make enormous amounts of profit in this system. provided you get the company to grow and make it big. And it's the same thing with American companies. You got a spittering out period of time of growth that's may happen or may not happen. You know, I can tell you stories that curl your hair. I tell you what, it's tough to build up a company. Many failures, many roadblocks along the road, and everybody wants a piece of the action on many, many liars. And that's just the way the nature is. So it's hard to get a company started. And I can tell you that the companies I've started, I've had many failures too. I don't know how I'm able to sit here with all the failures I've had. But after it grows and it reaches a certain point, you can actually make a lot of money. And there's a lot of Chinese companies that got started, and they actually have moved to America or have set up companies in America. They just took the profits they have and just bought these bullshit companies in the United States, and they run them. They might have Americans running them in management and roles, but they own them. The Chinese own them. And I know this because I know the people. They're nice people. I ate dinner with them, talked with them. A couple of them wanted me to run the companies, make some good money, nice salaries out there, because they trusted me. But I said, no, my family's here in China, and I don't want to go to Los Angeles. Though it was up my field, electronic manufacturing. That's my bailiwick. So you have this situation. You have this massive propaganda onslaught against China. And you couple it with this massive ignorance of the Chinese philosophy of life. And combined, you add a third factor, and that is isolation of the narrative. You have to keep the people away from the Chinese so that their philosophies, their ways of life, their ways of doing things does not pollute others and convince others that the Chinese way is better. Which was sort of the reason why I had all those negative comments by people who didn't watch my videos on why I thought China was superior. It's okay if you believe that having a country run like Starship Troopers is wrong. That's okay. What's not okay is just squirting out a narrative of something that you know absolutely nothing about. Have you ever been in a situation, I'm sure you have, most of the viewers here, the audience, have life experiences. Most are older and have life experiences. And they know people who sometimes, every now and then, there's an exceptional moment in time in history where somebody pretends to know a lot about something that they know absolutely about. Have you ever seen that, whether it's at a job or maybe in personal circles? They talk on a lot, but they don't know anything. And you know that they don't know anything. And for a long time you go along with it, but I mean really the bullshit gets so bad you need waiters. That's what it's like sometimes when I read some of the comments. The philosophical differences are significant between the West and China and the East. I'll just call it East China. It's significantly different. The way things are done is like night and day, and you have a propaganda onslaught that is massive in size and scope. And people who I respect in the American media throw out this narrative. Rush Limbaugh may be many things, and he called China Chi-Coms all the time. But if you go back through his spiels, he never really regurgitated the bullshit lie narratives. He never did. I listened to him. I paid attention to it. He was very careful not to repeat the bullshit lies. I have to have respect for that. Rush Limbaugh was a major conservative voice and in the United States, and for the longest time, I was a ditto head. Yeah, this pro-Chinese guy is a ditto head. But basic traditional conservative values, not neocons, they're not even conservatives. Basic traditional conservative values are growing inside of China and flourishing. No, you can't have a gun. But everything else is in China in spades. It's sort of like heaven for libertarians. I try to tell this to people and they're like, mind tilt. Ding, 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 ding. It's a Vault 7 influence. It's ridiculous, actually.
夜空缓缓地被点亮，光晕落在你手上，晚风吹开故事篇章，为你偷偷地酝酿，感受你的热泪滚烫，拥有巨大的力量。言语像是长出翅膀，在我的耳边游荡。对于你的一切，我无法抵抗，对未来不停止想象，我会继续到场，无畏乘风破浪。你是落在我世界里的一束光，像我本来万物都生长。你的温柔如此的张扬，也让我如愿以偿。你是照耀在我生命的一束光，点点滴滴都让我向往。拥有你晴空万里是寻常，有你的地方是我唯一的方向。对于你的一切，我无法抵抗，对未来不停止想象，我会继续到场，无畏乘风破浪。你是落在我世界里的一束光，像我本来万物都生长。你的温柔如此的张扬，也让我如愿以偿。你是照耀在我生命的一束光，点点滴滴都让我向往。拥有你晴空万里是寻常，有你的地方是我唯一的方向。你是落在我世界里的一束光，像我本来万物都生长。你的温柔如此的张扬，也让我如愿以偿。你
that I came to China was in the late 1980s, perhaps 1988, 89. It was a year or so after I left my Majestic training. At that time, everybody was trying to offshore their companies. When I came to China, it was backwards. Many dirt roads, a lot of smog. The cities were sprouting up, but they were just concrete structures, large skyscrapers of bare concrete and piles of dirt everywhere. I saw 6-lane dirt highways. They looked, and police were, they looked like something out of Mongolian Mad Max movies. I remember going through the Siko customs office to get into Hong Kong and take the ferry. And it was just a little tiny hole in a cardboard cutout. In those days, I directed a lot of attention. I went to a factory, and all the factories, man, you know, you're one guy in a factory of 6,000 girls between the ages of 18 and 23. God, I was like, damn. And over the years, I have watched it step by step by step get to where it is right now. I can tell you that America could have militarily fought China in a long duration World War situation, perhaps around 2002, 2003, and China would be struggling, but would be on par. Today, America doesn't have a chance, which is why all the RAND studies say that any war between America and China would be a disaster for America, which is why all the generals agree to it. People ask the generals, look it up on Google if you don't believe me. And the generals say America would lose. During Trump and the neocon Mike Pompeo, and they tried doing some stuff with China, tit for tat warfare hit back hard. So, you know, I'm telling you, you guys don't know who the fuck you're dealing with. You really don't know who the hell you are dealing with. America, under Trump and John Bolton, tried to create famine during the years of 2017 through 2019, and then out of frustration, maybe not out of frustration, maybe it was planned, straight to bioweapons to hurt the people. China survived. China's doing quite well. China's thriving. All right, tit for tat response. People are asking, I've wrote about this. It's going to be some articles coming out pretty soon that I'm going to throw this out to you guys. Strange confluence of events. Warehouses catching on fire, systems that farm things in the United States seem to be burning up. Logistics systems are breaking down. All kinds of things like this are going on in the United States now. Nothing you can put your finger on, but they're all leading up to a potentially bad food distribution system. China does tit for tat. If you're going to try to destroy China through famine, you can expect a retaliatory effect and retaliatory move. And I'm seeing the elements of that. You may not want to believe it. You destroy a Chinese carrier, Chinese will destroy your carrier. You try to sink a Chinese submarine, Chinese will sink your submarine. And Lord help you if you try to do a nuclear false flag. It's a different mindset. I watched Andre on a YouTube video from the Saker yesterday. And he really kept on talking about the American leadership, the people, the oligarchs. He wasn't talking about the American leadership. He was talking about the oligarchs that control the leadership. And he was just brutal. He's like, they're fucking idiots. They are out of their mind idiots. I was like, because they are. I think they are all on drugs. They're psychopathic personalities that have developed other mental illnesses as a result of massive drug use, and they are completely going batshit crazy right now. It's a good thing and a bad thing. Crazy people make crazy decisions. If you know that they're crazy, then you can counter the decisions and suppress the decisions and the things that they do without conflict. But to everybody else watching, they're like, oh my God. So anyways, here I am. I'm in China, and I'm just telling you the way the things are different. And the big difference behind everything that goes on in China is the fact that China has a different philosophy on life, on people, on social structures than what is in the United States. And it seems brutal, but it works for the Chinese. They will not impose their views on LBGT on you. But within China, there's zero tolerance. You can be gay and get along, but you can't promote it. It's not Chinese government's business to tell you who you can love and have relationships with, or what you can do in the privacy of your own bedroom. But it is their business when you are overt and outside doing this and promoting it. It's the same with Putin. Both China and Russia are traditional nations. All the rest of the world are traditional nations. The West is progressive nations. Anything goes in the West. Wanton sex with dogs and cats? No problem in the West. Do it in China, and you are going to spend the rest of your life in captivity. And if you think that teaching school kids wearing purple hair is acceptable, then you shouldn't come to China. They are very formal and very traditional. If you're a blonde or a brunette, they will not ask you to dye your hair, but they will not allow you to color it green. You are part of a community, you're part of a society, and you have a role within that community and within that society. And you conform to that role. You are that clog, that little gear within your little society. That society strengthens you as you participate in it. But if you deviate from that, if you're not a gear, then you have to leave that society. That's the Chinese rule. That is an antithesis to American philosophy. I can do my own thing. I can have green and purple hair. I can have sex with horses. I can do whatever I want because I'm free, and that's my liberties to do so. That's the American way. That's why America has that strength. As the one Air Force general described, the strongest military weapon that America has in the world is its acceptance of LGBT people. It's the strongest thing it has, because nobody wants to shoot the cute little bunny rabbits. I read that and I was like, got another article I posted up in my New Beginnings 3. Basically, it pretty much says that nearly 80%, over 75% of the people who try to apply to any branch of the armed services is rejected because they don't meet the minimum physical requirement. The weight-height ratio is way off the chart. People are morbidly obese, unable to even do the bare minimum of 5 push-ups and 5 sit-ups. Shit. In first grade here, all of the little kids, all of them can do 30 of them. Jeez. So, and I'm meandering. I'm sorry about that. The idea here is that it's two different philosophies. It's like oil and water. China is oil. Actually, China is water. The West is oil. And they really don't mix. And you can either accept water or you can accept oil, but you just can't intermingle, because what happens is the little pockets of oil sit inside the water. Because the philosophies are completely different. When the first American companies started coming in China, China was very poor and impoverished, and they accepted the money and they kind of accepted the American rules. But the government stepped in and said, you need to provide this, you need to provide that, you need to provide that. And I remember I had to tell the board of directors, and they're like, what do you mean it's cutting into our profits? And I was like, you're making enormous amounts of profits, and you want this little tiny sliver? You want to go from a profit of 98 to 97.5, and you think that's unacceptable? And immediately, the argument that I had, and it was like a 3-hour argument that I had in this boardroom for this little time, but they said it adds up. That's worth millions of dollars over time. And all I could think of is, and eventually I said, look, that's what happens. You're dealing with the Chinese government. You either accept the rules as they are or move, and I will help you move to another location where you can have a bigger profit. And eventually they looked at the numbers and they says, no, we'll accept that as a cost of doing business. But the fight that they had to have that was just extraordinary. I tell you guys, it was extraordinary. They wanted their money, every singular dollar of it. Greedy fucks. Looked like normal people. Actually, since that was in the 80s, you can imagine the woman with her pearl necklace, the guy with the white hair on the sides. This dichotomy of understanding is the focus for many of the propaganda that you're seeing in the United States right now, and the anger and fury of it. The powerful oligarchs are the ones that are running and ruling the West, while China is not ruled by oligarchs. It's ruled under merit. That's not the propagandized narrative, but that's the actual functional truth. And the oligarchs got there through making a lot of money one way or the other. They grab those little slivers of money. They're the ones responsible for your appliances breaking down a little early, because an extra penny in the cost of an appliance translates to millions of dollars for them. So when you complain about not having enough money to put an extra piece of cheese on your burger when you go through Burger King, just remember that ultimately it is the philosophy of the West that is causing this kind of problem that you seem to be having. And everything comes down from the leadership. That's the way life is. We say shit flows downhill. And it does. The United States today is what it is because of the leadership. They're batshit crazy idiots. And everything China is today, and it's very nice, is because of the Chinese leadership. Both China and Russia are doing quite well right now, and the people are doing well. And while you might read some American magazines speaking about how there's going to be a global famine and there's going to be global inflation, keep in mind that United States and Europe is not the world. It's the West. There's going to be Western inflation, Western troubles, Western trials, but not global. And this understanding between the East and the West, oil and water, is crucial and critical to understanding what's going on in China. And conversely in the United States. And for me, I can see the difference because I'm an American, I'm outside of the United States seeing it. It's kind of going crazy. And in every little way, from the story about how you can't be sick in schools to why everybody is wearing masks. You know, all that complaining about the problems in Shanghai last week, you know, the news media was flashing. Something must be done about the horrible situation in Shanghai. You know, all those people who were complaining they were expats? Local Chinese were like, meh. Our community is in trouble. We take care of it. It's ingrained in the Chinese philosophy, in the Chinese social construct. From day one, kindergarten to first grade and through on, you are part of a community. You're part of a community. And if the community is wearing masks, you wear a mask. If the community is in lockdown, you are in lockdown. If the community is eating baozas, you eat baozas. And these people are shouting, but about me, about me, about me, about me, about me, are not part of a community. Selfish fucks. Why don't they just shave their hair and dye it purple? go waltzing around and shitting in the roads in San Francisco. I've seen those videos, posted some of them. Freedom! Making the world a better place with your personal freedoms. Whether it's shitting in the middle of the road while people drinking Starbucks watch on, or cruising around, crashing into stores and looting them because your color of your skin will prevent you from being arrested. A difference in philosophy is fundamental to understanding China. So fundamentally, the East versus the West is oil and water. It is impossible for a unipolar world governance because no matter what big, enormous war may occur, oil and water doesn't mix. Eventually, one must take over the globe. The unipolar, an American-led world, wants to believe that it can control the world with its oil. What it does is it takes the leaders of various governments, drenches them in the oil, and thus controls the nations that way. That's coming to an end. On the water side, the East, they're like, the water's fine, it's nice, come in and swim with us. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But the water's really nice. It's a hot day, enjoy the swim with us. The West, America, rules by force. The East, play with us or not, it's okay. Take it easy. And that's the philosophies. But they're absolute about it, just like in the school. You're cold, your child's sick, she goes home. No complaints, it's just the rules. You have to protect the community. You have to protect the other children. China is a land where everybody polices themselves. You're all part of a team, you're part of a community. So when I read or hear comments from all these people that are regurgitating the bullshit narratives, George Soros has a hard-on for China. He doesn't like the fact that China's coming after him. Actually, China's going to allow him to die off. How can some of these oligarchs, how can they live so long in their 90s and still be existing? What are they doing? Some alternative conservative sources suggest that they take blood transfusions from young virgins. I don't know what they're doing. Seems very weird, right? The average lifespan for an American male is 74, 76. Average lifespan for an oligarch is 99, 104. What the hell? What's the difference? Seems pretty odd to me. So yeah, George Soros has a hard-on for China. He controls a lot of media. Bloomberg controls a lot of media. He has a hard-on for China too. If you can't control, if you can't get that girlfriend, your narrative ratchets up because your natural inclination is to make more and more absurd statements. But for somebody who's in the know, they know that those absurd statements are completely off the wall because it's out of character. There's a American saying, haters gonna hate. I think it comes from some urban area. Great statement. Haters are gonna hate. So be more accepting. Okay, so we've got a dichotomy between East and West. And the way to handle this dichotomy is to recognize that it exists. Forget the idea of nations, everybody's equal in the world, that philosophically we're all the same. We're not. There's different philosophies, there's different societies. Right now it's a battle between East and West. The West is being led by the United States, the East is being led by China. China is merit-driven, no matter what George Soros and Michael Bloomberg thinks. And they got their shit together. Keep that in mind, okay? Be part of a community, do your best. And at that, guys, I want to end up with my basic words of advice. Be good. Smile. Make a difference in the world that you live in. Be good to dogs, cats. Be helpful. Be the Rufus. Participate. Don't be a spectator. And when the situation calls, take action. And at that, guys, remember,